husband was weakling, so I cheated on him and called him a wimp, but didn't think he would do this. Hey Reddit, this is my first time posting on here. I honestly need a lot of advice right now. I'm in a genuinely tough spot and I am so confused. I called my husband a wimp, and ever since then he has completely changed. He is no longer the loving, kind man that I married, and I am so worried about him. I need some advice because I need to know what to do on how to tackle this situation. My name is Chloe and I am 27 years old. My husband's name is Theo and he is 29. Theo and I have been married for about 2 years and we met on a dating app. We don't have any kids because we wanted to hold on to that until we had gotten to our 30s. Theo and I have always had a great relationship, very playful, very understanding. The kind of relationship where we could tease each other and take it as a joke. It was all in good fun until that one night. Theo and I have always had a great relationship. Like I've said before, he was amazing because he always went out of his way. Theo was the kind of partner who would do anything for his partner. He always went all in, giving his best in every aspect of our relationship. One of the things that made him stand out was his romantic gestures. He would plan surprises, outings, and all sorts of special activities that made our time together truly magical. I remember one Valentine's Day when he surprised me with a weekend getaway to a cozy cabin in the woods. He had everything planned out, from the moment we arrived to the activities we would do together. It was such a thoughtful and romantic gesture that made me fall in love with him even more. Theo didn't just stop at big gestures, he was also attentive to the little things. He would leave me love notes around the house, cook my favorite meals on random weekdays, and always made sure to listen to me when I needed to talk. His thoughtfulness and effort in our relationship were what made our bond so strong. I felt cherished and loved, and I knew that he would always go above and beyond to make me happy. That's why it's so confusing for me to see him react this way to a harmless joke. It feels like he's a different person, and I'm struggling to understand why. Theo was a great guy, no doubt about that. He always went the extra mile to make me feel special, which was awesome. But sometimes he could be a bit too much. He was super nice, like all the time, which could get overwhelming. He'd stick to me like glue, and while it was sweet, it could also feel like he was suffocating me. I don't like using fancy terms like simp or wimp, but let's just say Theo could be a bit of a pushover and overly careful. He'd do anything to make me happy, even if it meant sacrificing his own needs. That kind of behavior was cute initially, but it got old fast. Outside of work, Theo lacked confidence. He'd hesitate a lot and always needed reassurance before making decisions. Even in private moments, he'd be super cautious, making sure everything was perfect, which could be annoying. I wanted him to be a bit more assertive and spontaneous, especially in our personal life. I didn't want him to change completely, just find a balance. Theo being so careful and always trying to please me ended up making me disrespect him without even realizing it. I sort of took advantage of how nice he was. I started ignoring what he wanted and assumed he'd always put me first. Because he rarely stood up for himself strongly, I started brushing off his opinions, thinking they didn't matter much. I felt like I had more control, which wasn't fair to him. I saw that I was falling into a habit of not valuing his feelings or what he wanted, just assuming he'd go along with whatever I said. It wasn't a good way to treat him or our relationship. I stopped pulling my weight around the house, leaving all the chores for Theo, even after he worked long hours. Out of the blue, I quit my job and expected Theo to foot the bill without discussing it with him first. When he raised concerns and suggested I find work or contribute in some way, I brushed him off and refused to listen. I became stubborn and ignored the strain I was causing, which was pretty unfair to Theo. Our relationship hit a rough patch and we started pulling away from each other. I started seeing Theo as too soft and accommodating, like he couldn't stand up for himself. It bugged me so much that it fueled this growing dislike for him. I couldn't shake off the feeling of frustration and resentment. It just made me dislike him more and more, and it felt like we were drifting further apart every day. As days went by, I found myself growing more and more fed up with Theo. Every little thing he did, whether it was trying to be nice or simply going about his day, grated on my nerves. His attempts to make things right felt fake, like he was just going through the motions without really understanding what was wrong. I started avoiding him whenever I could. Being around him felt like being trapped in a cage with the romantic gestures, the surprises. I missed the Theo who would light up my days with his surprises and affection. I want to find a way to reconnect with that side of him and bring back the joy and love we used to share. I need advice on how to approach Theo and talk to him about this. I want to understand why my harmless joke has had such a significant impact on him, and how we can go back to being the happy couple we used to be. If anyone has any advice or similar experiences, I would greatly appreciate hearing them. Thank you for reading. Update. Hey Reddit, I didn't expect such a backlash from my post. I knew it was a touchy subject, but the level of hate surprised me. Many comments label me as out of touch and insensitive, accusing me of being lazy and deserving blame. Let me clarify a few things. Firstly, despite my frustrations expressed in the post, I still love my husband. I use strong words out of irritation, not genuine dislike. Secondly, I am not lazy or insensitive. I understand Theo's perspective and our situation well. Some ask why I haven't gotten a job. The truth is, I feel restricted in a traditional job, and financially, Theo's income covers our needs comfortably. I appreciate the advice offered, but I want to make it clear that divorce is not on the table for us. Theo and I have a strong bond, and we have been together for years, and we are compatible despite our recent challenges. I hope this clarifies things a bit. Thanks to those who offered constructive advice. Update. Hey Reddit, I'm facing a tough situation and could use some advice. Tonight, Theo confronted me after finding out from a friend that I cheated on him years ago, back when we were still dating. I deeply regret my actions from back then, and the friend who revealed this information to Theo did so out of guilt after all this time. Theo's reaction was intense. He's angry, understandably so. He said things that hurt, calling me not just a cheater, but also a liar. He expressed that if he had known about this earlier, he wouldn't have proceeded with our relationship and marriage. He told me he can't forgive me and wants me out by tomorrow morning. It's all happening so fast, and I feel so scared and angry. I can't be homeless. I don't want to leave my husband. What do I do? I'm reaching out here for any advice or ideas on how to approach this conversation with Theo. Any help would be greatly appreciated. Update. Hey Reddit, the hate train is still chugging along, but I'm not letting it get under my skin. It's interesting to see how people express themselves, even if it's through hate. I've stumbled upon my posts on platforms like TikTok and Reddit, and the comments are not pretty, to say the least. But hey, everyone's entitled to their opinion, right? I've got thick skin, so this kind of negativity doesn't bother me much. I've seen my fair share of it. Now on to the real update, because it seems like many of you are curious about how my life is unraveling. My husband kicked me out. The morning after our confrontation, he seemed calmer, but that didn't lead to forgiveness. Instead, he expressed his heartbreak and made it clear that he couldn't forgive me. He essentially asked me to let him go. We had a conversation and I begged him for another chance, but in the end, he insisted on me leaving. So here I am crashing at a friend's place, typing this update. My life has taken a nosedive incredibly fast. I'm without a stable income, and to add salt to the wound, Theo has blocked me and drained our joint account. I'm in a tough spot, jobless and broke. Any advice or support would mean a lot right now. Update. Hey Reddit, I see the hate is still strong, but hey, a few positive comments stand out amidst the negativity. I wish I could share some positive news with you all, but unfortunately that's not the case. My husband still hasn't unblocked me, so any attempts to reach out to him remain futile. As for my living situation, I'm still crashing at my friend's place, but she's made it clear that I'll need to find a new arrangement soon as she can't host me indefinitely. The job front isn't looking great either. I'm jobless at the moment, and the looming reality of having to search for one soon is daunting. So yeah, life's pretty tough right now. I noticed many of you asking for updates, so here's one, although there's nothing major to report at the moment. Update. Hey Reddit, quick update from me. First things first, I want to address a common question I've been getting. Yes, I immediately cut off the friend who spilled the beans to Theo about my past cheating, and I also distanced myself from anyone who supported her. I didn't have any friends in the first place, so my circle has shrunk significantly. That's good anyways, because they claimed to be my friends, but wouldn't help when I needed it. On a brighter note, I have a job interview lined up for tomorrow. It's a step forward, and I'm hoping for the best. Your support means a lot, so thanks for reading and wishing me luck. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again, posting here despite the ongoing negativity because, well, why not? Unfortunately, I don't have much of a positive update to share. It feels like things are just not falling into place for me. First off, I didn't get the job I interviewed for, which was incredibly frustrating. I put in the effort, went through the process, but sometimes things just don't work out as planned. Secondly, my friend kicked me out of her place. She felt I had overstayed my welcome, and despite my desire to protest, I had no choice but to leave. It was a tough blow, especially since I had nowhere else to turn to. I ended up back at my parents' house, a situation I had hoped to avoid. There's some bad blood between us from my childhood, and it's clear they still harbor resentment. It's only been 2 days, and I already feel like I'm losing my mind. They constantly bring up past issues, and it's hard to be here. On a slightly brighter note, Theo unblocked me and reached out. It's a small positive amidst everything else going wrong. Maybe he might forgive me so I can go back home. Update. Hey Reddit, thanks for the support I've been receiving here, no matter how little. It's also interesting to note that the hate train is still chugging along. A few updates on my end since my last post. Firstly, like I said, Theo unblocked me, but it wasn't for good news. He informed me that he wants a divorce. That hit me hard, and it's not something I wanted to hear. I thought he would forgive me, but I guess not. Secondly, I'm still struggling to find a job, and I'm stuck at my parents' place. The pressure is mounting, especially with my parents constantly on my case. They believe Theo shouldn't divorce me and want to intervene, but I feel like his decision is final and that he has made up his mind. Parents aren't listening to my perspective, and they're also blaming me for the divorce. It's hurtful and very exhausting dealing with their constant criticism. Even my siblings seem to be siding with them, which just adds to my emotional burden. To make matters worse, my in-laws reached out, but instead of supporting or asking for my side of the story, it was to pour blame and insults on me. It's disheartening to feel like I have no one in my corner, especially when even my friends haven't reached out during this difficult time. Thanks for reading and for any support or advice you can offer. Update. Hey Reddit, here's a quick update since many of you were asking. My parents tried talking to Theo, but he wasn't having it. They went to his place, he let them in begrudgingly, and the chat didn't go anywhere. Theo made it clear he was done with me, end of story. My parents left feeling defeated, and I felt pretty embarrassed about the whole thing. They're still pointing fingers at me, which adds insult to injury since I warned them. It's been rough, to be honest. Thanks for reading and caring, though. Update. Hey Reddit, just a quick update because things have been pretty rough lately. It feels like everything's happening at once, and I'm just exhausted. My parents are still on my case, pushing me to find a job and contribute financially or leave. Today I got served with divorce papers, and it hit me hard. I couldn't hold back the tears. I miss my husband terribly, and in a moment of desperation I called him, pouring my heart out, but he hung up on me. It's incredible how one innocent word said while joking has snowballed into all this chaos. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a minute since my last update. I wanted to wait until everything settled down before giving a final update. I might have used Reddit a bit too much as a sounding board, haha. Anyway, here's what's been happening since then. First off, the divorce is officially finalized. Surprisingly, I was awarded alimony, although it's not much. It did help me secure a place with a roommate, which has been a relief from the toxicity at my parents' place. The judge considered my past mistake of cheating, but since it happened before the marriage and years ago, it wasn't a significant factor in the decision. As expected, my parents weren't thrilled when they found out I was moving out instead of staying and paying them rent. It was a bit of a tricky situation because staying and paying rent to them didn't really make sense, especially since they also expected me to take care of their needs. I tried to reason with them and asked if they could at least reduce the rent, considering my circumstance and condition. However, they flat out refused, and that's when I realized it was time for me to leave. Their anger and refusal to compromise only added to the tension, but I knew I had to prioritize my own well-being. Leaving did strain our relationship even further. They wouldn't talk to me for a while, but I had to prioritize my own needs and financial stability. Sometimes tough decisions are necessary for personal growth and independence. Secondly, I've landed a job. It's not the dream job by any means. It's low-paying and demanding, but it's a start. I'm hoping to find something better eventually, but for now, it's helping me get back on my feet. I understand. Let's dive into the story. Oh yeah, remember how I mentioned my friends? Well, they've been as silent as a mouse in a library. Not a single message, not even a, "How are you holding up?" I mean, seriously? It's like they vanished into thin air when things got tough, so you know what I did? I hit that block button like it was my job. I realized they were just there for the good times, not the bad. Fake friends, right? The kind that ghost you when life throws a curveball. So, no more pretending they're there for me. If they can't be bothered to check in, they don't deserve a spot in my contacts list. It's time to clean house and surround myself with people who actually care, not just when it's convenient for them. I also did try to keep in touch with Theo, but he refused any contact. I respect his decision, even though it's tough. I know a lot of people are going to say I deserve it, and rightfully I think I do too. I was stupid and I underrated Theo. I took him for granted. Right now I'm focusing on moving forward and rebuilding my life. Thanks for reading and for all the support. Snitches deserve stitches and not the other way around. If I could get my hands on that hag, I would make sure she pays for what she has done to me. My husband wanted to kill me because I had an affair with my friend that I kept on telling him there was nothing going on between us. Obviously, there was something going on between us, but I didn't tell my husband. Guess who did? My snitching neighbor. I always knew she was a no-good witch ever since I denied her access to my party. I always knew she had a thing for my husband, and now with me out of the way, she was going to get what she wanted. That two-timing witch. She had just wanted me out of the way, and she had gotten her wish. I should have moved when I knew there was something odd about her. Q. She's a single mom. Now I've lost my husband to the likes of a snake, and I am recovering from injuries. What do I do, Reddit? How can I make it all go away? I need my husband back in my life. I don't have any means of paying my bills. He had ruined that for me. I didn't mean to start an affair behind his back. I was cajoled to take from the tree I wasn't supposed to take from. I won't say cajoled. I was forced. I was led by my evil sister because I wanted what she had. I promise I'm not a bad person, and my story is going to be a little complicated, but I just need options on how to get my husband back. That is why I'm telling my story. I cheated on my husband with my sister's boyfriend. Basically, he was my friend before he became my sister's boyfriend, and maybe I would have married him if my life didn't toe a different line. But anyway, that's beside the point. I wanted to drop context. I'll get into that later. My husband had told me that he was traveling for a business trip for 3 days, and I had thought that with the opportunity I could call my lover to come and stay in my house for those few days, to see my house and get the taste of the good life. I didn't know what I was thinking. I honestly don't know what had gotten to me at the time. I didn't know it was a setup for my husband to catch me, and my husband and my neighbor had connived together. Their plan had been to humiliate and put me in a mental trauma where I didn't know what to do as long as I signed those divorce papers and didn't ask my husband for a single penny. I was in bed with my lover when my neighbor suddenly burst into my bedroom and took pictures and dashed out. I had dashed out after her. Note, I was only wearing the bedsheet wrapped around my body, and followed her into her house and found my husband seated on her couch and her phone that she had used to take a picture. It was at this point that my senses cleared and I realized what had happened. My husband was supposed to be on a trip, but he was in front of me with a picture of me sleeping with another man. Then he told me he would send the picture to my boss and all my clients and my family and show them what a fully married woman was doing behind her husband's back. I was a property lawyer who worked for a high-top firm. I thought he had been bluffing, so I had gone back to put on some clothes and come back to talk to him like a civilized person. I was shocked, and I wasn't computing what had just happened properly. As I got back home, I found blood everywhere on the ground and was hearing sounds coming from the backyard. My husband had hired goons to beat up my sister's boyfriend, and that was what they were doing in my backyard. I had gone to break up the beating, and someone gave me a blow in the process that I landed up in the hospital for a concussion. When I woke up, my husband began threatening to arrest me if I didn't provide the money he had kept in his safe and then sign the divorce papers. He had gone this route with my conniving neighbor so he could get me to sign the divorce papers. If he had just asked me to sign them, I wouldn't have signed them. They had it all planned out so well, but they hadn't factored in the fact that I would get beaten up. I had no idea what money my husband had been talking about at that time. I didn't know he had money in a safe, so he started threatening me. And he had done good on his threat and sent my picture and an incriminating headline and letter to my boss and my clients. I started getting calls from left and right that they couldn't talk to me. You may be wondering how my husband had my clients list. That was simple. He was friends with my boss, so my clients list was easy to get, especially when my boss was also looking for a way to ruin me because I had cheated on his friend. This was how my husband had gotten my clients list. There were so many calls that I had to change numbers. Being my husband's friend, my boss told me I shouldn't step foot into work, and my reference letter is shit now thanks to this. But anyway, I wasn't worried about work. I was thinking of how I was going to be able to give my husband back his money that I wasn't aware I stole. I thought it was my sister's boyfriend that had stolen it, and when I had called him, all his numbers were off. I had no way of reaching him. I had even gone to his workplace, but they told me he had quit without notice. I was in a frenzy. This was what my husband had put me through, and I'm sure they had all been laughing about it, making me look for money that wasn't there. It was a sum total of 50,000 grand, and my husband had been threatening hell on earth if I didn't pay him back the money. He had given me the divorce papers and thrown me out of the house by the time I got back from the hospital. I had to stay in a hotel from the little savings I had amassed while working. My family wasn't on speaking terms with me because I had gone and slept with my sister's boyfriend and gotten divorced. My parents were big church people. However, I wasn't worried about all that because I was looking to pay up what I thought my sister's boyfriend had stolen from my husband's safe. I didn't want him to divorce me, so I knew for certain if I got the money back, I would know how to mend what having an affair had done to my marriage. I know I was that delusional. Plus, my husband was seriously threatening me with going to the police, and I was scared of that because if my parents got word that one of their children had gotten arrested, it could be a disaster. So I was trying to avoid that. I was doing everything in my power to avoid that. My husband told me he would drop the whole money if I signed the papers and then never bother him in court about money settlement because we had signed a prenup when we had gotten married. My dad had insisted on it. I wasn't going to sign the papers initially, like I had said before, until the police showed up in my hotel room and told me I was under arrest for theft. They brought me in for questioning and I was released that day, but that did the job of invoking fear in me. I went to look for where to borrow the money, and I went to my dad. He told me he would give me the money, but he never wanted to see my face again in his house. I took the money because I thought I could live with myself if I could get back my husband. That was the plan in my head. I got the money and the worst thing happened to me. I got robbed in the taxi I entered. The universe was out to do me back for wronging my sister and my husband. And I don't know what I had done to my neighbor, but her too. The money was gone. I didn't have any means of getting it. All that was in my was saying all those things. He was saying all the things I needed to hear, and I fell for it. He asked that I give him a chance, that he would always be there for me if I gave him a chance to prove himself. I was missing love, so I had given in and kissed him, and opened the Pandora's box. This was how I had started deceiving my sister and having an affair with her boyfriend. Anytime my husband was away, my sister's boyfriend would come around and we would sleep together, and he had a huge tool, so it was like I had found the perfect man. My husband wasn't talking to me, so I wasn't receiving the quality time that I needed. But with my sister's boyfriend, I was. I was getting all the attention I needed, and I didn't feel guilty for it then. My husband didn't care what I was up to, so I had to create my own happiness, or else I would have run mad from losing my baby. My sister's boyfriend flirted with me and made sure I was okay, even though I was the richest of the two of us. He still bought me gifts and everything. This was why when my husband claimed his money had gone missing, I never believed that it was my sister's boyfriend that stole it. This guy loved taking care of me, and I used him to escape the bad place that losing my baby put me in. I had done it behind my husband's back and behind my sister's back, too. I had gotten so entangled in him that I didn't know how to come out of it when my husband started behaving like he had married me again. My husband suddenly had a change of heart after about 3 months of leaving me to deal with my trauma alone. He had started asking me I was okay questions, and I was basking in his attention once more, but then I was already kind of in an affair with who was supposed to be off limits to me. Then I began sneaking behind my husband's back and going to see my affair. And whenever he traveled, I would sneak my affair into the house and we would make out before he goes home. I'll see him off. This was when my neighbor discovered us one of the fateful days. I was making out with him on the driveway, and my neighbor had driven in and shone her headlights on us. I had pushed my sister's boyfriend into his truck and had ran inside the house. I thought she would mind her business, but the woman had come to my house and knocked on my door and asked if that had been my cousin. Like, who in the hell does that? I told her to mind the business that paid her and slammed the door in her face. I was seething. I thought that would be the end of her and her nosiness, but this woman infiltrated herself into my life. It was like she wanted me to fear her because of what she had seen in the driveway and wanted to use it to her leverage. It worked Redditors. I won't lie. It worked like hell because I was always on edge around her. If my husband was throwing a barbecue, she was there and always wanting to help. She would go out of her way to be friendly. She literally became best buds with my husband, and her son was just another issue. She would drop of her son at my house with me. She wanted to form friendliness and she was pushing it, but she had major information on me, so I had to pretend she was my friend too, to make sure she never dropped the bomb on me. I didn't know she had gone to my husband with that piece of information at the first drop of sunlight. I had tried to be careful around her. I was friendly and never tried to make her mad. I also stopped having my affair at the house. My husband and I had been working on our marriage. He had come back from his trip and told me that he didn't like how careless I was regarding my health, knowing I was carrying another life in me. And we had talked and had agreed to go to couples therapy together, so we had been working on our marriage. But then I couldn't let go of my husband, and I couldn't let go of my affair either. I got selfish and I got caught by my neighbor again. I had gone on a date with my sister's boyfriend, and we had gone to a restaurant, and when he was seeing me off to a cab, I had seen my neighbor getting out of the restaurant with her son. And she had winked at me. She had effing winked at me. I had gotten home and gone to her house, and she hadn't been around. I had gotten scared, and I had done the worst thing. I had gone to threaten her. I had told her that if she liked herself, she wouldn't dare to speak on anything she had seen. I had been bluffing, but it was because I had been boxed to one corner and she had decided to call me out on my bluff. It was all my fault, definitely. I should have stopped my affair while I still had a chance, but I had proved stubborn once again. I was careful around my husband, and I hadn't known my husband had been too deep in his friendship with my neighbor to believe when she told him I was cheating on him. He had believed her at just the words she told him. I was not loved at all. Now that I think about it, what if he was cheating on me with her too? That would be so twisted. But my husband wasn't like me. So this was how my husband had planned with my neighbor to catch me, and I was none the wiser. I had been the one to set the trap for myself. I get that. I had done it to myself. I had gone through a lot of suffering because I had been so blindsided and not know what had taken over me. I was ruined career-wise, and I was ruined family-wise because my dad never wanted to see me again. My sister had barred my number from her contact list. This was after she had called me and hurled all the curse she could at me. She was crying and telling me she was going to lay out candles and stick my body to a voodoo doll. She wished I had died in the hospital. I had broken my sister and I had made her hate me. I had done that to someone who had always been by my side and made sure I never lacked someone emotionally. I had gotten her ex-boyfriend beaten up all because of my selfishness for more, and my jealousy, and I had lost the money. This was all the things I had been thinking about when I was dropped in front of my hotel from another cab after I had been robbed. The only thing that was a lifeline to getting my husband was gone. My bill had expired and I left the hotel to go to stay with my friend who I had made in college. She didn't know I was married. I had just lied to her that my family was having issues. There was nothing I didn't think of after I had been robbed of everything. My savings had been cleared to the robber's account because he had held me at gunpoint. I was in trouble with my husband and the police, and my parents were going to see me in jail, and this would break their heart the more. My dad had already suffered a heart attack, and another issue might result in him in a grave. This was all I was thinking, and it had happened. I had gone to my dad again to ask for money, and he had raised his voice at me and told me that he never wanted to see me. Then I told him it was the last thing I was going to take from him. I got a call after I had gotten everything stolen that my dad was in the hospital from a second heart attack. I couldn't go to see him with the issues hanging around my head. I had been squatting with a friend who didn't like that I was staying with her and not paying the rent. I was so close to going to mental. Then the pay period my husband had given me to pay his money was up, and he came with the police, 2 men in police uniform, to my friend's place. I had no idea he knew where I was staying. He asked where was the money, and I told him I didn't have it. He said the only way I wasn't getting arrested on that day was if I signed the divorce papers and another paperwork. I agreed because I was caught in a very tight place. There had been no other options left open for me. The paperwork read that the divorce was settled amicably and I wasn't going to contest over my husband's money in court. Basically, the prenup was annulled and we were going our separate ways without eating off each other. I would have been the one to benefit more if he had asked for a divorce and this whole issue wasn't in the middle. I signed the papers and my husband laughed after I handed it over. The 2 police officers shook hands with him and left. Then he told me there had been no money in the safe, that this was all the neighbor's idea to get me from leeching off him after he asked for a divorce. And it had worked. I was shocked. The police officers had been the neighbor's brother and friend, so it could be believable. He didn't want me to take his money as he knew I would, and this was the best plan. I had cut ties with my family and everything, and it had all been a ruse. My friend kicked me out after the ordeal. She had said she didn't want the police near her place. I'm typing this from my maternal grandma's computer at her place because that was the only person that didn't know what I had done. You guys, my actions are weighing me down greatly. How am I going to get my husband back? I need suggestions. I regret what I did and I just want everything to go away. I wish I could turn back time. I'm sure my neighbor has her claws on him right now and I'm letting it happen. I can't let them get together, bond over me. I need to get my husband back, Redditors. I have realized my mistakes. Help!